of last week, running from the heat, but the beat's coming alive.
Hello, wackos. Welcome to Without a Country. I am Corinne Fisher. Thank you so much for being here. Sorry for the delay. I mean, you know, when I say 7 o'clock, I usually mean like 7:20, 7:30. I don't usually mean 8, but we had a last minute switch out for who's producing the show today. So Mike texted me very soon before the show saying that, he got a tooth pulled and the pain was just too much for him. And listen, I don't mean to openly make fun of him, but I am openly making fun of him. First of all, can you imagine a woman saying that? Like, can you imagine like a mom of 3 being like, I'm sorry, I can't pick the kids up from school today because I got a tooth pulled. I got a tooth pulled and got dry sockets, as many of you know, years ago. And well, dry sockets specifically was one of the more painful experiences of my life. But I showed up. I showed up to everything I needed to show up to. So I am laughing hard, but we got AJ in the booth right now. Also, can you imagine like someone like a Republican saying that, like if a Democrat said that they couldn't come into work because they got their tooth pulled, we would never hear the end of it. And someone who is, I don't want to call Mike a Republican, but more right-leaning. It's just very funny. Curtis Sliwa wouldn't have called out if he had his tooth pulled. That's all I have to say, Mike. So I don't know where you are. But thankfully, AJ here at GAS was able to swoop in and save the day last minute. So thank you so much. If you hear a voice during the show, it will be him. I'm sure many of you are probably happy that Mike won't be sharing any of his viewpoints today, but you know that I will defend Mike endlessly. So that is the dealio. Okay, so people are trying to book me on a podcast right now, so I'm gonna put my phone on silent. All right. So let's just get into the show. We have so much to go over. Oh, and I'm also on the couch today, not just because I decided it should be a more leisurely show, but because the desk that I usually use broke. It broke and they tried to replace it and it wasn't the right desk, so I'm on a couch. It's actually kind of comfy though. And this mic I think might be better, so I don't have everything on. So this will just be more kind of like gals talking about the news, and we'll do it from the couch from now on. I don't know. I don't have my shoes on, which I like, but I usually don't have my shoes on. You guys just can't see it. You guys want foot stuff? These are my mayor socks. It says I can't today, and then the other foot says I'm doing mayor stuff. Christina got them to me. Shout out. Got them for me. Shout out. All right. So first of all, we do a little plugs at the top of the show because big news. We've been talking about Kat Abu-Ghazaleh a lot, who's running for what the hell? Who's running for Congress in the 9th District of Illinois. We've been talking about her race a ton on this show. One of the listeners, one of the wackos, originally brought it to my attention a while back, right when I announced that I was running for mayor. I believe it was George. Shout out to Wacko George. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. And in the time since, Kat and I have started following each other, and she was familiar with me. And anyway, we're doing a live stream together tomorrow. I'm appearing on her campaign's live stream, because I reached out a couple weeks ago and I said, hey, now that my race is over, I would love to support you however I can. That's what she asked of me. She said, please come on my live stream. We'll chat for, an hour to 90 minutes, and people can ask us both questions, and people can chip in small dollar amounts to her campaign. So let's get that going. Tomorrow it's 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 Central Time, because she's, in the Chicago time zone. It's going to be happening on Twitch. Yes, do I have to download Twitch for this appearance? 100%. They're like, download Discord. I'm like, something I've only ever heard of. But it's good because I've been meaning to download Discord anyway. So, we'll be on Twitch tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Kat and I talking about politics, talking about running for office, I'm sure. And, throw her a couple bucks, even if you are not in Illinois, even if you're not in Illinois District 9 specifically. It's important that we have great Congress people, and so many people from across the country donated to my campaign for mayor. And I think, let's support these, candidates. And just because you support her, for instance, financially, doesn't mean you can't support someone else running for just in District 9 financially. You can definitely chip in some money to several candidates that you think would be doing a great job. It's hard because you want to be like loyal to one candidate. And I am loyal. I am loyal to Kat, but also, I don't live in Illinois District 9. But I want people who are youngish. And when I say youngish, I mean like under 70, quite honestly, because I think like the ageism has gotten a touch out of hand. It depends. 70 looks like a different thing for different people. But yeah, like I'm looking for like under 70 and energized and passionate and someone who won't easily just become part of the establishment and fall in line and will continue to listen to and serve the constituents who elected them. Like, that's what I'm looking for in a candidate. And I think Kat is fired up and doing some really unique stuff. And I really like this one aspect of her campaign that I wanted to, if I had gone on longer, would have also used in my campaign, which is serving the people before you are elected to office. And she's done a really great job of that. Doing food drives and, pantries and things like that. And that's one aspect of the campaign, because that really bothered me when I was running for mayor, that you get into it to help people and then you spend a year, if not more, just talking about yourself and how great you are. And I was like, that's 100% not what I wanted to do. I understand that it is, as my advisor said, the longest job interview you'll ever go on. But, that's not what I was wanting to do. And if you're looking at this screen right now, is that coming up on everyone's screen or only I? Oh, that's the screen only I can see. Sorry, we're doing things a little differently today, so I was confused because there was a different candidate's website up on my screen, and I was like, that's definitely not Kat's. This is a Republican's website that we'll be talking about in just a minute. Okay, but yeah, so join us tomorrow if you are watching this live, and I also promoted it on my Instagram, but I think it'll be a really interesting conversation, and I'm personally interested in talking to Kat more about her campaign, her experience. Obviously, she was fucking indicted, so that's crazy. I'm sure that's not what she wants to concentrate on, but I think, even whether or not you plan on voting for her, I do think it's important that we support her because she absolutely should not have been indicted for peacefully protesting. That's insane. Second order of business, we talked about a couple weeks ago. You guys have been saying you wanted merch. I worked overtime with my amazing graphic designer who has done a lot of the posters and the work for Eye of the Tiger tour and some things that you've seen recently. His name is Joe Frontel. Shout out. We are supporting real life artists. We are not making art on AI. Don't worry. But Joe and I have been working on this, a small collection, but it's a collection. So it takes a little time to put together over the past couple of weeks. I think we just finalized it like yesterday. So now I'm working with a printing company. And again, working with a small business, which does mean like, I think the quality is good. I've worked with them before, but, I'm trying to also keep prices low, but I'm also trying to support small businesses. That's who I like to work with. And so, the more pieces in the collection, the less of each item we sell, so the higher the price has to be. So I'm going to do a collection, but it's going to be a very small collection, and that's the reason why. I can't offer like 50 million different types of items because there's like a startup cost for each item. I'm like, this is kind of boring for you, like an embroidery and stuff. So there's like basically a price to start the template. And then, if you have, sell 12 of these items, it's this cost. And basically I'm going to be making like a few bucks on each item, but I want to get them to you guys who have been asking for them. And, I think it's good for, it's good for like class morale. It's good for class morale, right? That's, podcast morale. I want you guys to rep the podcast. I love my Without a Country merch, so I definitely want to be repping the podcast. And, I hope that you like the items that we designed, and hopefully those will be out soon. That being said, we'll do it like a 2-week pre-order window. I don't think you guys are going to be able to have them physically by Christmas. I was trying, but they basically have to be on a truck by December 16th to get to you by Christmas. And I just don't think that's possible. But you can certainly purchase them before Christmas and print out a picture of it and stick it in a stocking, and then someone has something to look forward to in January, which I honestly think is fun if there's like one late present, because we're so overstimulated in December. There's so much fun, so much excitement, so much social gathering. And then especially if you live in a colder, winter climate like I do here in New York, then it comes to January and you had so much fun in December. Like, even if there's sad moments, if you have, a dead dad or something, like it's still filled with like a lot of fun and excitement and socialization and good eating and holidays. And then it goes to January and you're like, I got nothing except for the stress of me having to achieve something big this year. And how the hell are we going to outdo last year? Because bitch, you ran for mayor. This is me talking to myself. But this is like, I was like, I have some great, exciting goals for 2026, but I go, how are we going to outdo what you did in 2025? I guess getting on the ballot could be step one, but yeah. So that's the update on merch, but that I should have that like link up probably by the end of the week for purchase. So get those credit cards ready. Really excited for that. I was trying to make more money for the show. I don't think I'm going to make that much profit on it, but I don't know. I can't mark things up too much for you guys. Like, I just don't believe in it. And then New Year's Eve, we're doing my show that I always do on January 31st at New York Comedy Club East Village. I'm thinking of doing a crowd work show. I'm kind of in the mood. I've never done a crowd work show, like me hosting one. And I just kind of feel like that might be the vibe for this year, especially because I usually I wrote new material this year. I didn't write as much as I normally would have because of that whole running for mayor thing. But yeah, those are my thoughts. If you go, oh, that sounds like a terrible idea. But I also think like it's just like it's a kind of show you guys have never seen me do before. It is completely a different muscle. I think crowd work specifically could be really fun for a New Year's Eve show. So I don't know. Let's think about it. On to the WACO mailbag. If you guys want to send me an email, it's withoutacountrypodcast@gmail.com. And again, I always see all the emails. Please don't be personally offended if I decide not to specifically feature yours on the show. I still appreciate you sending it to me. You're, definitely informing me of things that are happening all over the country, especially with these municipal stories that I may have otherwise not been aware of. So I appreciate it. And please don't be offended if I don't feature it on the show. This week, I have an email that was sent by WACO Allyssa in regards to our conversation about conversion therapy that's still going on in Colorado last week. And she says, hey, Corinne, I saw last week you mentioned a conversion therapy case in Colorado. It's still happening in Florida as well. And these conversion therapists got their attorney fees covered by the county after their lawsuit. Not much substance about the actual case in the article that I shared. However, it does mention that the therapists were represented by the nonprofit Liberty Counsel Legal Organization. Could be of interest to you. And yes, Alyssa, it is of interest to me. So thank you so much for sending this in. This is from CBS News. It says Palm Beach County, Boca Raton ordered to pay $885,000 over conversion therapy bans. Palm Beach County and Boca Raton are required to pay about $885,000 in attorney fees and other legal costs after a battle about bans on the controversial practice known as conversion therapy, a federal appeals court ruled Monday. The judge initially approved a lower award. U.S. District Judge Robin Rosenberg last year approved a magistrate judge's recommendation to award $736,227 in attorney fees and $659 in costs to lawyers who represented marriage and family therapists Robert Otto and Julie Hamilton in a challenge to the constitutionality of ordinances that banned conversion therapy. This is so interesting to me because like, I understand they're saying they're, like, out of money, whatever, freedom of speech, but, like, to me, I can't believe that conversion therapy isn't just recognized as abuse. Like, how is this not just this is mental abuse. I don't understand how it can't just be categorized as that. But after the therapists appealed the fee award, a 3-judge panel of the 11th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals on Monday increased the amounts to $884,000 and change in attorney fees and $659 in costs. In part, the appeals court rejected reductions made by the magistrate judge and approved by the district judge. Let's see. Local ordinances aimed to protect minors. Palm Beach County and Boca Raton passed ordinances that barred therapists from providing treatment or counseling designed to change minors' sexual orientation or gender identity. Critics of such therapy say it harms minors who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. But a panel of the Atlanta-based appeals court in 2020 ruled that the bans violated First Amendment rights. The therapists were represented by the nonprofit Liberty Counsel legal organization, according to Monday's ruling. And I understand, like, that it's a First Amendment. That's where I'm confused. I'm like, how does, because, you know, a therapist, when you're going to sit down with a therapist, you know, that's a doctor for your mind, basically. Their word is, in that situation, worth more than a common person's. So because they are claiming to have some kind of, schooling, some kind of level of expertise. So I would argue that it is not First Amendment, because you're not just saying your opinion. You are saying an opinion, or you are saying something that, like, holds weight, that is supposed to have some kind of medical validity. One would help, but I guess because they're counselors, they're just saying, well, we're just kind of recommending. That feels like very, very wonky territory to me, though. Let's head over to Liberty Counsel website. Oh my god, stop it. First of all, AJ, can we on the screen bring up Liberty Counsel? It's the libertycounsel.org. First of all, if you can tell that, I don't even know how they're winning cases. I guess they're putting all their money into paying their lawyers, because this is the cheapest website that I've ever seen in my entire life. Okay, it's lc.org if you're listening at home and you want to go to do it. I mean, first of all, there's a very scary woman who's just standing. I guess this is the current case that they're working on. I mean, this looks like the kind of website you would build in association with AOL.com. Like, you remember back in the day, if you're a millennial, watching how you could build your own website, in quotes, that you got kind of your own free homepage when you had an AOL email account. AJ, did you have one of those? Mine was off the chain. It was so good.
I had GeoCities.
Oh, you had a GeoCities, but, like, you built it yourself. Did it look better or worse than this website?
It looked better than this website.
Right.
It was like sparkling text and stuff.
Right.
It was really eye-catching. This is like really painful to look at.
This is so bad. This is actually inexcusable in 2025. And there's always some kind of thing to sign up for. Oh my God, they're covering the stories that they're working on here. This is really alarming. But people work on this. So it says, stay informed on our legal news. Watch our latest Liberty Alert Spotlight video. Okay, top news: states protecting against gender ideology. Guide: states that are protecting unborn children. A lot of stuff about trans people and abortions, which are their absolute favorite topics on a website like this. University of Arizona fired professor who wanted to protect children. Let's see. All right, so let's see what I'm just going to see what story is happening here. Liberty Counsel filed a lawsuit against the University of Arizona on behalf of former ethics professor Daniel Grossenbach, who was fired for publicly advocating for parental rights at local school board meetings where his children attend school. The public school district is not affiliated with the university after the Christian professor advocated for reversing public school policies that promoted teachers secretly surveying children about their gender and homosexuality. The university unlawfully terminated him based on anonymous complaints about his religious speech and advocacy. Liberty Counsel represents Grossenbach, stating the university discriminated and retaliated against him for exercising his First Amendment rights to speak out according to his religious beliefs and to protect his children. I mean, my first question here is, how the hell is a guy with the last name Grossenbach a Christian professor? But I guess his mom could have been Christian, his dad was Jewish, and he just kept the last name, obviously, because it's his last name. That's my assessment. Liberty Counsel is seeking a permanent injunction that declares the university's discriminatory actions illegal and unconstitutional for violating his constitutional rights of free speech. They really love leaning into this free speech stuff. And then they love saying there was irreparable damage done to children. All right. Well, and then they also have another court order bans mom from taking daughter to church. Liberty Counsel presented oral arguments before the Maine, as in the state Supreme Court, on behalf of Emily Bickford, who has been barred by an unconstitutional custody order from taking her 12-year-old daughter to church or religious organizations. The order also allows prohibiting the daughter from reading the Bible. Bickford, a single mother, is appealing the custody order that declared her church's mainstream biblical teachings to be psychologically harmful and granted the child's father, who objected to the teachings, the sole right to govern the girl's religious activities. The order gives Matthew Bradeen the sole right to decide about whether his daughter may, 1, attend any services, gatherings, or events associated with Calvary Chapel, 2, what material, literature, video, or other messaging associated with or created by Calvary Chapel she reviews, and 3, whether she can associate or communicate with any member of Calvary Chapel. This is crazy. I could spend hours on this website, guys. I'm going to be in a deep hole. I don't want to take the whole episode, but this kind of stuff is endlessly interesting to me. And again, when, they're winning these, close to $1 million lawsuits, even though their website, you do have to pay attention to places like this, Now let's look at what's happening at Calvary Chapel, and the husband's or the father's argument in this case is exactly what I'm saying about conversion therapy. How can we not argue that conversion therapy is pretty on the books as being psychologically harmful to people? I know, I guess.
What do you think the success rate is?
I mean, I think it's pretty low. I don't know if we have, look up the stats. You're at the thing. But I don't, because it's made up, I would assume it's pretty low. Basically, conversion therapy, you just have to lean on the hope that you can guilt someone into not sucking a dick. Like, a man who wants to suck a dick, you have to hope that his guilt is more powerful than his want to suck that dick. Calvary Chapel is an international association of evangelical charismatic churches founded by Chuck Smith in 1965 with a focus on systemic verse-by-verse Bible teaching. God help us. Chuck Smith thankfully has passed on. I hope him and God are, God was like, me and you need to have a talking. Chuck, are you going to get a talking to? Oh my God. Now I'm just Googling Chuck Smith is gay. All right, it says he was married, but anyway. All right, so let's move on. But that's what's going on over there. Alyssa, thank you so much for sending that in. I love stuff like that. Shout out to all my patrons. Thank you so much for being a part of it. All hail to our great dictator, Christopher Fungi, to my capitalist pigs, and to my cuties. If you want to be a little Christmas angel, you can come and support the show for as little as $6 a month. It's patreon.com/withoutacountry, and you would get an additional video news story every single week of the year that I record right after this episode, and then it becomes available to everyone on Thursdays, the day after we live stream. All right, going into the enemy of the state right now. This has to do with the special election that happened yesterday in Tennessee. Unfortunately, it did not
of the state.
Unfortunately, it did not end in AFTYN, who I had been supporting, winning, but she made really incredible progress in her district. So that's definitely to be applauded. And it seems like I think she will be running again. So my enemy of the state this week is the guy who won, Matt Van Epps. Let's go to his website now. So first of all, you land on mattfortntennessee.com. You know, he is a West Point graduate and combat veteran, ready to support President Trump's MAGA agenda in Washington. That's what it says. It says there's a big gold button that says endorsed by President Trump, fighting for Tennessee families. Now, the district that they, were running in does include Nashville, but is also historically pretty red. There was like Republicans, I believe, had like a 22-point lead. And AFTYN was able to close that gap by a lot. I think ultimately he won by like 8 points. I want to say, I'm going off the top of my head here for that. But she got a good amount of the vote. I was kind of reading that a lot of times in scenarios like this, Democrats have been relying on stronger third-party voter or candidates that would eat up some of the Republican votes. And in this scenario, that unfortunately did not happen. But to that I say, what a Democratic strategy if I've ever heard one. Your strategy is to lean on candidates that are not the Democratic candidate. I mean, I don't think that really happened as much with AFTYN because she was such a strong candidate. When I'm sitting in New York City, on a couch in the East Village talking about a congressional candidate in Tennessee, that's a great thing. That's a good thing. That means that her campaign did its job. But, again, I don't think a good strategy for Democrats across the board is let's hope we have some stronger third-party candidates who will appeal to Republicans and eat some of the vote up. Okay? We want to do what Republicans have successfully been able to do over the past couple of years, which is bring people over to our side, right? Say, hey, I don't think the Republican agenda is really turning out to be what you were sold. And I know you're someone who doesn't like being lied to. No one likes being lied to. But I know some of you did, maybe start voting Republican because you were sick of Democrats lying to you. So I am a Democrat, but I am recognizing that problem within my own party, and I am here to be a part of the solution. That's the kind of messaging we want. But then, these younger, more progressive candidates have to actually be able to deliver on these promises. So let's see. Let's read President Donald J. Trump's endorsement to Matt. Like, his whole website seems like it's all about Donald Trump. And it's like, are you running for Congress or are you running to lick Donald Trump's asshole? Like, this is like, for a grown man to do this, like, this is so embarrassing. If I was Matt Van Epps' wife, and first of all, I'd be a beard by the looks of it, then secondly, I would be so fucking embarrassed. I would be so fucking embarrassed that I was having sex with an adult man whose whole life revolves around kissing the ass of another adult man. Yuck. Yuck, yuck, yuck. It is my great honor, and G and H are both capitalized. That's not how the English language works, but okay, go off. It is my great honor to endorse America First patriot Matt Van Epps, who is running to represent the great people of Tennessee's 7th Congressional District. A West Point graduate and combat-decorated Army helicopter pilot, Matt knows the, all caps, wisdom and all caps, courage required to defend our country, support our incredible military and veterans, and ensure peace through strength in Congress. And I would also say, I got to be honest, all respect to people who serve in the military, but my assessment, only having been in politics and ran for office, not having been in the military, full disclosure, I think we know that about me. But it seems like the qualities that would make you a good Army helicopter pilot are perhaps, we can all agree, yeah, that's cool. You're a decorated Army helicopter pilot. That's hard. I'm sure that took a lot of strength and courage. I don't think it's the same strength and courage, however, that you need to run for office, right? Obviously, if you're a helicopter pilot, you probably have to be pretty physically fit. But I think you also have to be able to like compartmentalize and to be able to acknowledge that you might end people's lives, but hoping it's for the better good, or the greater good, and that you are serving a purpose that is higher than yourself. In this case, your country. It sounds like God, but it's your country. Sometimes, for some people, God and their country, but in all cases, your country. And so, like, when you're running for office, you are also serving your country, but there should be no one who is getting harmed in that process. You don't have to compartmentalize. Like, we have all these people. I'm not saying that you cannot be someone who serves in the military and have empathy. Of course you can. But I think, especially if you're serving during wartime, I would imagine, would have to, for your own survival, compartmentalize your empathy, because otherwise you would not be able to survive that process. It would be grueling. Whereas I think we need leadership, and we're starting to get it, that leads with empathy at their fingertips, that does not say, well, I think we're going to lift this group up, in the area that I'm representing. And unfortunately, because I am choosing to lift this group up, all these other people will continue to suffer, or worse, will suffer more because of it. Like, that's not how it should work. When you're running for office, your thought should be, how can I make sure everyone gets enough? How can I make sure everyone gets enough? And sometimes that means taking a little bit away from people who have more than enough. It certainly doesn't mean making one group suffer, in extreme ways, sometimes death. So I would just argue that, yes, I think we can agree these are both, things that we respect. I think we have just come to accept that people who are in the military, that makes sense that they're running for office. Like, but does it? I mean, is he in a leadership role? He's a combat helicopter pilot. It's not, it's just a little, it seems just a little bit different to me. And again, I am not super well versed in like what everyone exactly does in the military role by role. So please explain to me why you think it would do. But it's the same reason, Eric Adams coming from, working with the police, you go, that's not exactly a great thing to have on your resume if you want to be mayor, because most of the people you will be leading are not the police. You have a bias towards one of the major groups you will be in charge of. Doesn't actually seem good at all. I don't know. Support our going back to this. Support our incredible military veterans and ensure peace through strength. In Congress, Matt will work hard to keep our now very secure border secure, stop migrant crime, grow our economy, cut taxes, promote Made in the USA, champion school choice, unleash American energy dominance, and defend our always under siege Second Amendment. He is strongly supported by my good friend Congressman Jim Jordan and many other highly respected MAGA warriors. It's one of the worst paragraphs I've ever read in my life. Matt Van Epps has my complete and total endorsement to be the next congressman from Tennessee's 7th Congressional District. He will never let you down. That's a wild thing to write at the end of someone's endorsement, because I think, unfortunately, every congressperson will let someone down eventually who voted for them. And it's also our job as constituents to just recognize that, overall, let's hope someone doesn't mostly let us down, but like, we also shouldn't turn our backs on them the minute they make one decision that we disagree with, which I see a lot of people doing. And I've also experienced it myself. And I perhaps am too empathetic, because I had to talk about it in therapy, because I was just like, I can't believe people who have supported me for years turn their back on me for what? Like, that's so crazy to me. It's also like, if you're very familiar with someone, you know them for a really long time, or you know them, parasocially for a really long time. One thing that you don't agree with, you're gonna turn. Like, I hope you don't navigate your real life relationships like that, quite honestly. And sometimes I don't even know what it is. I'm like, okay, whatever. All right, let's moving on to the article about AFTYN BEHN. This is from NPR. It's a political analysis by Stephen Fowler. Tennessee's special House election sets stage for affordability-focused 2026 midterms. A Democratic overperformance in a Republican-won special congressional election in Tennessee on Tuesday sets the stage for a 2026 midterm election where affordability remains a top issue. And, AFTYN BEHN has already talked about possibly running again in 2026. Republican Matt Van Epps won Tennessee's 7th congressional district by 9 percentage points. It was 9, okay, over Democratic State Representative AFTYN BEHN after millions of dollars in outside spending drove up turnout and attention on the contest in its final weeks. President Trump won the district with roughly 60% of the vote last November. Former Representative Mark Green, who resigned in July, won by a similar margin. Tuesday's results saw Democrats gain ground in deep blue areas that saw lower turnout last year, and paired with last month's sweeping victories in races across the country, suggest the rightward drift of young people and non-white voters in 2024 has snapped back toward Democrats. Republicans were able to motivate their base to show up and vote without Trump on the ballot, and with a campaign that did not focus on his policies or grapple with his unpopularity. And this is, something you can do, especially if you're in, a city with a lot of access to other people your age or something like that. Again, like just another idea. I know there's a lot of go-getters who listen to this podcast, but if you're, thinking, what can I do? Well, if you live in and this is any place, but especially places where you have these really big elections that can really change the country, or that they're very close, or that red is turning to, has a chance to turn to blue. This is an opportunity for you to maybe mobilize your own group of people. Do you go to a fitness class with a lot of women your age? Most people, if you have a traditional job, you're going to have off on election day. So make a plan, say, hey, we're all going to vote together, and then we're going to go to brunch afterwards. Like, it's fine. Pair it with something fun, right? I understand that people want to do something fun, but I think, in this loneliness epidemic that we're going through, like, lots of people do want to make friends. They don't necessarily know how, but they want to make it with, people who share interests. And like, politics is an interest. It should be everyone's interest. It's not, unfortunately, because it's, we talk about it as politics, and I'm like, oh, when people say they're not interested in politics, I go, oh, you're not interested in like you making sure that you have health care and that your rights aren't taken away, and that government, your taxes are going to fund things that you want them to be funded to, not hateful things, and not deportations. Anyway, so like I think that's like a good idea, because I think mobilization is really the key right now. If you are a Democrat, and obviously if you're a Republican too, Republicans just have been better about this in the past, but I'm not going to help mobilize Republicans to vote for Republicans. But if you are a Republican listening, like, mobilization, I think really is the key. That's really what we're trying to do. If you feel passionately about a candidate, whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, Libertarian, socialist, communist, whatever the fuck you are, and you feel passionately about a candidate, mobilizing voters and getting them to the poll, ultimately, out of all the steps, that's the most important one. It is so statistically hard to get voters to show up to the polls or to mail in their ballot. Millions and millions of dollars are spent nationwide, and we talk about wastefulness and money that could be going towards better things. You are saving money for the country. You're saving money that could be spent better if it does not take 50 mailers and 7 phone calls and 5 door knocks and all these things to get you to go out to the polls. If you are become a voter that people can depend on, not a voter who has to be cajoled to go to the polls. Like, you are saving money and you're doing a good thing and you're doing your civic duty. So yeah, I think like if you guys want to work on something, mobilization for election day wherever you live is a great thing to do, whether that be, coordinating transportation for elderly folks or people with disabilities, like whatever it is, get freaking creative. That is such a great way to help that I think, many people have the time and capacity and funds, because they will be minimal, to do that. Van Epps's victory means Republicans will grow to a 2020 to 2013 advantage over Democrats until Georgia Republican Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene's planned resignation on January 5th, 2026. Running from Trump is how you lose. Running with Trump is how you win, Van Epps said in a statement Tuesday night. That's a crazy thing to say. Can you imagine like that's in your winning speech? Yuck. Our victory was powered by a movement of Tennesseans that are ready for change. It's like we all say the same shit. We are grateful to the president for his unwavering support that charted this movement. This is how you talk about a dictator, and catapulted us to victory. President Trump was all in with us. That made the difference. In Congress, I'll be all in with him. How about talk about some of the things you're going to do for the people who just voted for you, not some ass licking thing about how we couldn't have done it without President Trump. Trump posted a congratulatory message on his Truth Social website earlier in the evening. Congratulations to Matt Van Epps on his big congressional win in the great state of Tennessee. The radical left Democrats threw everything at him, including millions of dollars. Another great night for the Republican Party. But the closer than expected contest that also prompted heavy investment in money and manpower from Republicans has Democrats declaring their own sort of victory heading into the 2026 midterm cycle. Democratic National Committee Chairman Ken Martin said in a statement that BEHN blew away expectations and touted the party's string of overperformances in 2025 after losing the White House and Senate last year. What happened tonight in Tennessee makes it clear Democrats are on offense and Republicans are on the ropes, Martin said. AFTYN BEHN's overperformance in this Trump plus 22-point district is historic and a flashing warning sign for Republicans heading into the midterms. In nearly 60 state legislative and congressional special elections, Democrats have improved on their 2024 margins by an average of 13% and are coming off a string of high-profile victories in races up and down the ballot last month. In Tennessee, BEHN earning roughly 45% of the vote is a similar 13% shift in margins from how the district voted last November. In the final stretch, outside money floods the race. According to the latest Federal Election Commission data, outside groups spent more than $6.5 million on the race, including more than $1.6 million from the pro-Trump MAGA Incorporated Super PAC. 2/3 of the total Super PAC spending came in the last 2 weeks of the race as early voting picked up in earnest. And I mean, you can basically I forget exactly how to do it, but you can create a super PAC basically, right? As if you're just like a rich person, you can basically create a super PAC. It's just like a place where you put your money that is outside of the realm of your individual threshold as a donor, because there are maxes that you can donate. But of course, in America, if you have enough money and enough power, there's always a way to get around the law. So people create these special interest super PACs and then they put their money in there. But really, it's just a couple individuals who have a shit ton of money and want things to go a certain way for them. And so, that's just yet another incentive to all the people listening to this show to make a shit ton of money, because not because you want to drive around in fancy cars and live like the Kardashians, although that does seem nice, doesn't it? But because money is power and we want it in the hands, similar to fame, we want it in the hands of people who are going to do good things with it. obviously, like, best case scenario would be that we wouldn't have to trust the rich. There would just be a more equal distribution of wealth. But until that time comes, while we are still at the hands of capitalism, it is my personal goal to make as much money as I fucking can so I can do good things with it. Because obviously we see what happens with people who have a lot of money right now. It's not great. But there are people who do, good things with it. There are people who exist in the world who do good things with it, and hopefully we can be like those people. Let's see. 2/3 of the total super PAC spending came in the last 2 weeks of the race as early voting picked up in earnest. Scant public polling of a typically lower turnout special election, coupled with a less reliable sense of who will make up the electorate, has also added pressure on both parties to squeeze out every vote in what was considered a possibly tight race. An Emerson College poll released last week found Van Epps slightly ahead of BEHN, but within the margin of error among voters surveyed. Yeah, it's interesting because I saw AFTYN BEHN's social media, and it seemed like from her campaign's assessment, it was more like they thought it was more like a 2 to 3 point gap. And then as we see, it ended up being a 9-point gap, which still incredible work, incredible improvement, but not as close as we thought. And I think the Democrats, we do keep doing that. We do think it's a little closer than it actually is. Let's see. Surveys released in October from Democratic-aligned firms showed Van Epps with an 8-point advantage, roughly in line with the average Democratic special election overperformance this year. The closing sprint of the race saw a slew of surrogates make campaign stops and virtual appearances to support the candidates. Former Vice President Kamala Harris and Martin, the DNC chairman, attended canvassing events for BEHN last month, while former Vice President Al Gore and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez headlined a Zoom rally Monday evening. And this is another example of why people like AOC, do have to be strategic with endorsements, and yet again, why I think endorsements are mostly bullshit. Because, again, they affect the reputation of the person giving the endorsement. It's publicly saying, I'm putting my stamp of approval on this person, and they're hoping that their stamp of approval has enough weight. And so when the candidate that they chose doesn't win, it's like kind of making it seem like they're not good at betting, in layman's terms. And then two, it's also saying, it's kind of revealing that their endorsement doesn't hold the weight that we would hope it does. I think this one kind of might fall outside of that because it was such a red area. But in closer races, especially, in places like New York City or where we know it's going to go blue, but we don't know to which candidate, people really do have to be a lot more, selective. And so I really appreciate AOC sticking her neck out for all these people and being really supportive. If I were her, and we think maybe she's thinking of running for president, I would maybe stop with endorsing all these people. Because thankfully Zoran won, but that was also a gamble for her. And there was plenty of articles about that. Again, I think kind of endorsements are part of an establishment nonsense for show, bullshit, but, a lot of people like endorsements. Let's see. House Speaker Mike Johnson held a Get Out the Vote rally Monday morning for Van Epps that featured Trump calling on speakerphone to proclaim that the whole world is watching Tennessee right now. Both parties made affordability a top issue in the race. You have to, especially on the airways. Van Epps embraced Trump's endorsement and also focused his closing message on the economy. In one ad, Van Epps decried career politicians and promised to bring down prices, create good-paying jobs, and lower health care costs for working families. BEHN's closing ad promised that she would shake up Washington by making health care more affordable, bringing down the cost of living, and protect workers and small businesses from job-killing tariffs. During a Monday evening telephone rally for Van Epps, Trump dismissed affordability as something Democrats mentioned to distract from what he said are his administration's numerous accomplishments. They like to talk about affordability, Trump said in the Monday evening tele-rally for Van Epps. To them, it's just a con job. It's just a word. Wow. Okay. Well, that was fun. That was exciting. Moving on, this is just something I wanted to point out before we get to like the bigger stories of the week. I think AFTYN was, a lot of local and national level, actually, a pretty big story. This is white on the whitehouse.gov. I like to, I always suggest taking a little trip over to whitehouse.gov every now and then. But if you go over to whitehouse.gov/media bias, the White House, the official White House website, has like a wall of shame for journalists that they disagree with now. I mean, this is basically like it's like a slam book. You guys know what like a slam book is. Like in Mean Girls, like you guys ever pass around like a notebook where you just write shit about people that go to your school? This is the government level of a slam book that we have. Like, this is so embarrassing to have here. So it's Media Offender of the Week. And it right now where it says exposed with a stamp on it. It says the Boston Globe, CBS News, and the Independent. And then there's some kind of like a video montage of reporters saying that you can refuse illegal orders, and that you must refuse illegal orders, and that the president has, and then it says that the president has actually never given an illegal order. So again, it's not even really well put together. And it's a stamp from the White House that says seditious on it, which, means, causing people to rebel against authority, which is crazy when you think about it, that he's having something on the White House, stamping it with seditious, because or I guess he's claiming that they are inciting people to rebel against the authority or the state, which is crazy because, that's kind of what America is about. Like we as individuals hold the right to to do that. That's democracy. So first of all, it's funny that he thinks anyone who voted for him knows what seditious means. That's the number one thing. Very, very actually not MAGA and not Republican and not Fox News of him to use a word like seditious. So, slay President Trump, as if he put that together, as if he knows what seditious means. Some intern who has an expensive degree did that. And then also the fact that they're stamping people who are like saying you don't have to go along with this bullshit as seditious is real. It's dictator-ish esque. I mean, that's really crazy. But again, that's just the thing that I wanted to check out on the White House this week. Because I saw that I had read that there was now a White House journalist Hall of Shame, and I had to see it for myself because why not, baby? All right, going into two of what I am saying are the main stories this week. The main stories this week, in my opinion, are ICE being dispatched in NOLA. Like, that's the next city, New Orleans, that's going to get hit hard. It already started. And then the Supreme Court case, Trump v. Slaughter, which is basically going to determine whether or not the president gets more full control and Congress gets fucked in the ass more, for lack of a better word. So we're going to go to ICE in NOLA first. This is from the Washington Post. DHS launches new immigration sting in New Orleans. Across New Orleans, residents had anticipated the operation, particularly immigrants. Some businesses had closed while others posted signs saying ICE not welcome here. Well, I'm sure that'll keep them out. As they're knocking people over in the streets, pulling people, swinging people by their hair. And again, props to all of you in the street fighting them. If I see ICE, I'm getting in the street and fighting with them too. They're always like further downtown than I am. I'm like, oh, tell me where they are. I'll walk. Although I do live pretty close to Chinatown, so I can go over and join the fight. But if you are going to be in person, fighting against ICE, just be very careful I don't want you dying. I mean, they are flinging people, and in life, it's easier to die than you think. If you hit your head hard against a wall or something, and again, like I've been thrown by the cops while protesting against a brick wall. Luckily, like my head didn't hit the brick wall. It was my back that hit first because I went into it like that. But just be very careful. Certainly don't go into it with the confidence of like, I'm a woman, they're not going to physically harm me, or I'm white, they're not going to physically harm me. There's plenty of white people and women getting harmed in these videos that are of ICE. Their faces are covered, and I know some places are trying to introduce legislation saying that ICE cannot have their face covered, but right now their faces are covered and they are extremely violent. These people are angry. They're trained in a way to act physically, not mindfully. And so it is important to stand up for these people, but also please, you don't end up dying, in the process. I think there are other ways to be a hero. That doesn't mean get out of the streets. That doesn't mean don't fucking blockade them so that they can't, get their cars. But just do it as a team. Don't, if you're like 5'3", don't try to. I wouldn't try to like, slap a guy who's 6'3" and weighs 300 pounds. Because I don't want to see you with your skull cracked open on the ground for lack of a better word. But if this is your number one issue, if this is like what women's rights is to me, if this is your number one thing, this is the thing that you've committed your whole life to, and you say, I don't care, I will give my life for this, fine. That's honestly great. I applaud you. But just like, I just want to, I feel like, people, especially young people, are really bold when they go into protesting. But protesting is like something you have to know what's going on. You have to know your own rights as a protester, and you have to know how to keep yourself safe if you are arrested or if you are attacked physically. And I just see kind of people going into it, and I don't know that they have that information. So, as a 40-year-old who's been protesting a whole life, literally since she was in a carriage, just don't put it past these people. They're crazy. They will slam you against the wall. It's happened to me, and I don't want it to happen to you. All right. Let's see. New Orleans, the Department of Homeland Security announced the start of a new immigration enforcement operation in New Orleans on Wednesday. Today, the latest in a series of sweeps that have resulted in thousands of arrests, legal challenges, and protests. DHS said it was launching Operation Catahoula Crunch. They're really making fun of us. They think it's a big ass joke that they're tearing apart families. There was a fucking 60-year-old Asian boy who was from Astoria, shout out AJ, native New Yorker, who was like missing for days. It was the third time he had been separated from his dad by ICE. They just found him. I was on top of that. They just found this kid. What is going on? DHS said it was launching Operation Catahoula Crunch to target criminal illegal aliens roaming free. This is a quote from them. Criminal illegal aliens roaming free thanks to sanctuary policies that force local authorities to ignore U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement arrest detainers. New Orleans also is a sanctuary city. All these little operation names they make. I read somewhere that the alternate name for this operation was like Sweep the Swamp, I believe they were calling it. Really disgusting. Really disgusting. And again, it goes into this thing that we talk about a lot on this show now. It's like, this is how jokes become not jokes. The government shouldn't be making like little ha-ha, punny, cutesy names for separating children from their parents and putting them in cages. The announcement included a list and photos of 10 undocumented immigrants from Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, Jordan, and Vietnam, who the agency said had been arrested for a variety of crimes in New Orleans and later released. The men and women of DHS law enforcement have landed in the Big Easy, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi L. Noem wrote on social media. Operation Catahoula Crunch will remove the worst of the worst from New Orleans, Louisiana, after the city's sanctuary politicians have ignored the rule of law. Immigration enforcement escalations in Los Angeles, Chicago, Boston, and for a shorter time, Charlotte, have generated unrest. Residents have alleged civil rights abuses, and policing experts have questioned the tactics used and the training provided to agents in the rapidly growing U.S. immigration enforcement apparatus. And if you read in between the lines there, it's like they're questioning the training. They're saying the expansion of ICE is happening, so rapidly. So obviously, if you're expanding at the rate that we're expanding at, there is no way that these ICE agents would have time to be properly trained, would know how to de-escalate, would know how to minimize harm. There is no way. So please just know you're dealing with literal barbarians. You're dealing with people who probably signed up because they heard a Spotify commercial and they were like, oh, you know what? I would love an excuse to fuck someone up. I have anger that's mismanaged or unmanaged mostly, and I would love to get paid, $80K a year to just fuck people up because I'm an angry guy and I don't want to have to go to therapy. Please use my code. If you're an angry man listening today and you were going to join ICE, how about just go to therapy? I think, try code guys on BetterHelp. Maybe that still works. While DHS has said the operations are targeted at capturing violent criminals, many undocumented immigrants with no record have also been arrested. In Chicago, the agency said immigration officers arrested more than 4,000 people in Operation Midway Blitz, but officials have publicly identified only about 120 of those arrested as having criminal arrest or conviction. Right? Like, first of all, if you have this list and you have this photo, these photos of 10 people who you really feel are criminals in NOLA, okay, go get those 10 people. We don't need a whole operation for it. We don't need a whole 10 people. 10, you could just give it to citizens arrest. Don't do citizens arrest. Can you imagine? Then go get those 10 people. Great. Why are we getting 4,000 people? Some for major crimes such as murder and others for nonviolent offenses such as illegally crossing the border. Like, I'm not a crazy leftist. If you are someone who came here, you're undocumented and you committed murder, yeah, let's deport you. I can agree on that. I don't think that's a crazy thing to say. But you had a fair trial. I'm hoping, and you were convicted of murder. Yeah, you gotta go. That's fine. But this is not fine. This is not even close to fine. This is not even the realm of fine. In each city, whistleblowing protesters have trailed immigration agents, warning neighborhoods of their presence. In Chicago and Los Angeles, especially, immigration agents were limited in their ability to manage large hostile crowds or protesters as they worked independently of Chicago police officers who were not permitted to assist in immigration arrests and shouldn't. Across New Orleans, residents had anticipated the operation, particularly immigrants. Some businesses had closed while others posted signs saying ICE not welcome here. First Grace United Methodist Church posted a sign citing scripture that read ICE, "Whatsoever you do to the least, you do unto me." And they said, what does that mean? In the first day of the operation, videos shared on social media showed agents making arrests outside hardware stores and at a building site. For some, that signaled, as in other cities, that DHS's sweep in New Orleans would go far beyond apprehending violent criminals. In reality, they are not pursuing criminals, said Mario, a Honduran immigrant who has worked construction and spoke on condition that his last name not be used because he does not have a legal status in the country. They are pursuing people who are applying for asylum and trying to become citizens. It's a lie. They're pursuing workers, not criminals. New Orleans mutual aid organizations have been watching how immigration operations played out in other cities, and several groups have collaborated with like-minded entities in Chicago, Los Angeles, and Charlotte to learn new strategies. Chicago organizers said they believe the network of civilians that tracked and recorded immigration officers there helped hold them accountable, in some cases for violent interactions. Another idea to help: especially if you are someone who, depending on, where you live in the country, like in my case, it would be someone who speaks either Chinese or Spanish. I would say would be the most useful languages as far as fighting back against ICE. But if you are someone who is bilingual, and you can use the fact that you're bilingual, which is a free, awesome skill that you have to help people in your neighborhood to make sure that they know their rights, to write up your own pamphlet and stick it in people's mailboxes. Like, let's get creative here. That's a way, take an afternoon. You have a Sunday, you want to hang out with your boyfriend. You know what? Actually, that would be so hot. If I was in the early stages of dating someone and they were like, hey, I really want to hang out this weekend, but it's fucking crazy that all these ICE raids are happening. Do you want to get together and design an eye-catching pamphlet that lets people in our community know their rights, and we can, get it printed in Chinese and Spanish and hand it out in those communities? Yes, I'm wet. I'm horny. That sounds fucking great. You're spending time together and you're doing something helpful. Win-win. What we've learned is that even a street witness who is not recording make these interactions less traumatic and less violent. Makes these interactions less traumatic and less violent, said Beth Davis, a press liaison for Indivisible NOLA. So we need to get eyes on these people. The crackdown in New Orleans comes as state lawmakers put mounting pressure on law enforcement agencies to cooperate with DHS. Lawmakers expanded the crime of, how do you say that word? Malfeasance?
Malfeasance.
I could have sounded that out. That one was pathetic. Sorry. You guys know I can't say words. Corinne for Congress. She can't say words, but she can read well. So obviously just like wrongdoing. Crime of malfeasance. I just want to say, like, it looks, because when I'm looking at it, I want to say Maleficent. And I know that's not why, but do you think maybe Disney named her Maleficent because it sounds like malfeasance? I don't know. In office, punishable by up to a decade in jail, to include government officials who refused requests by ICE and prohibited police and judges from releasing anyone who illegally entered or unlawfully remained in the U.S. without notifying ICE. Such a law shouldn't be necessary, but around the country, and even the sheriff in Orleans Parish about a year ago indicated that she would not cooperate with ICE, said GOP State Senator John J. Morris, who represents northern Louisiana and wrote the state law. I hate that we have to have a law to tell people they have to cooperate with federal officials. Lawmakers have also made it a crime to hinder, delay, prevent, or otherwise interfere with or thwart federal immigration enforcement, and those in violation could face fines and up to a year in jail. Some mutual aid organizations in New Orleans have been directing people to buy whistles similar to those used in other cities, but others have not, anticipating immigration agents or local police may class the use of whistles as obstruction. That's interesting, but before they do, buy your friends some whistles. On Wednesday, the ACLU filed a federal lawsuit on behalf of Immigration Services and Legal Advocacy, a New Orleans-based nonprofit, against Louisiana Attorney General Liz Muriel and other officials, alleging the state law is unconstitutional because it violates the First and 14th Amendments by criminalizing protected speech. Morris said the new laws could come into force if New Orleans officials or others attempt to interfere with DHS. New Orleans police spokesman Reese Harper said that federal officials had not notified the department about when the operation would start and that police will not be involved. We'll handle the criminal aspect of the law. Border Patrol and ICE handle civil. So it's unlawful for us to even touch that, Harper said. The only way we would even come in contact with them is if they called for backup, like a life-threatening situation. New Orleans police and the Orleans Parish Prison have operated under federal consent decrees for more than a decade, which limited their cooperation with federal immigration enforcement. The Justice Department accused New Orleans of undermining federal immigration enforcement and included it on a list of 18 immigrant sanctuary cities. But a federal judge ended the consent decree last month, and Police Superintendent Ann Kirkpatrick said that she would be a partner to the federal agents, although officers will not be conducting immigration arrests or asking people about their immigration status, according to a radio interview with W. Bach reported by the Times Picayune. Local and state leaders were split on the prospect of more immigration agents in Louisiana and Mississippi. New Orleans Mayor-elect Helena Moreno, who will begin her term in January as the city's first Latina and Mexican-born mayor, criticized immigration enforcement tactics during surges in other cities in an interview with CNN on Tuesday. It's one thing if you would have a real strategic approach on going after people, exactly like I said, who have criminal felonies or are being accused of some very serious and violent crimes. But that's not what the public is seeing, Moreno said. They're seeing people who are just trying to survive and do the right thing. And many of them now have American children who are not causing problems in our community, treated like they are violent criminals. The Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office has refused to honor ICE detainers at the jail for more than a decade, but state officials last month challenged that policy under the new state law. A spokesman for the sheriff's office this week referred questions about the operation to New Orleans police. And this also makes me it makes me laugh so hard. I mean, not actually funny, but it does make me laugh that MAGA, this party that's talking all about how, vote for me, vote for President Trump because states should have, more power and control over what happens in the state. Like states should have more individual power. And then they do shit like that. So you're full of shit. You only want states to have individual power when it comes to things like making sure women don't have safe access to abortion. Fuck you. Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry, Republican, told Fox News on Monday that we don't talk about specific operations, but we certainly invite Border Patrol official Greg Bovino and ICE Deputy Director Madison Sheehan and Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and all of President Trump's great team that's trying to make America safe to help make Louisiana safe. That's him kissing his ass. New Orleans is a crime-ridden city that we've been trying to keep people safe and something we've been working on since I became governor of Louisiana, he said. I'm welcoming to them to come in. We're going to take these dangerous criminals off the streets in Louisiana. You know what you should concentrate on if you're governor of Louisiana? How about concentrate on making sure that you don't have one of the lowest test scores in the United States for school children? How about you concentrate on that, bubs? How about that's what you work on? Because guess what? That's going to then, if you truly think that Louisiana is crime-ridden, guess what is statistically proven to help that? Giving people a good education so that they can get good jobs, so that they don't have to commit crime because they have opportunities in the workplace because they were given opportunities as children that they should have in a government in a first world country, you fucking slimeball. Asked what he thought of Kirkpatrick saying she can't enforce immigration law, Landry conceded that she can't and blamed the recently lifted federal consent decree that decimated the New Orleans Police Department and led him to create a French Quarter-based team of state police called Troop NOLA to get crime under control in New Orleans. In September, Landry requested a National Guard deployment to New Orleans, citing an alleged increase in violent crime, even though police and city leaders say crime has decreased and federal support isn't needed. Can you look up on the stats on that and see if there's any sources that can actually tell us that there's been an increase in crime? AJ, please. Louisiana is a key hub in Detention Alley, a region that includes Texas and Mississippi that's home to most of the country's largest federal immigration detention centers. Louisiana's centers house up to 6,000 detainees. The state opened the new Louisiana Lockup. I mean, that sounds like a fucking theme park. In September, within the Louisiana State Penitentiary in Angola, Angola. That's also that same place I believe that I had read that they have prisoners, play poker as bulls. They do the rodeo. That's where that happens, I believe, in Angola, if my memory serves me right, that I did the whole video about, that I couldn't believe that this was possible, that they subject prisoners to absolute cruelty and harm in a rodeo at the chance of, winning $250 to spend at the prison commissary or whatever. Sorry, I don't know if that's the right name. To hold immigrants whom federal officers consider dangerous. In a news conference, Noem said the prison's notorious reputation, which includes a long documented history of civil rights abuses, was a factor in choosing the facility to house undocumented immigrants. The New Orleans immigration enforcement operation, previously dubbed Operation Swamp Sweep in media reports anticipating the action, instead references Catahoula leopard dogs trained by early Louisiana settlers to hunt wild boar. So just so you know, that's what they think of immigrants. They think as ICE, they think that they are hunters hunting pigs. A lot of people are locking their houses, said Leticia Casildo, a co-founder of the nonprofit immigrant advocacy group Familias Unidas en Acción, who immigrated to the United States from Honduras and who has lived in New Orleans for 20 years. It's a scary time. It's also just a shame because it's just like this is happening in some of the most beautiful and interesting places that America has to offer. Not that it would be okay to happen anywhere, but like, you know, New York City, Chicago, New Orleans, these are some of my favorite, absolute favorite Charlotte, favorite cities that I have spent time in. Being a touring stand-up comedian, for the past 15 years. These are some of the best places America has to offer, and they're just absolutely tearing them apart, and it's really, really disgusting. And everyone should be able to enjoy those places. So what are the stats on crime, AJ?
What I'm seeing is that there's not clear evidence that crime has actually increased. In fact, they're saying that homicides have been down in New Orleans.
Oh, what a surprise. I knew
so
that.
he just kind of wrote a letter saying, hey, we need troops. And Trump said, okay, here's troops.
Right.
But I don't know if there's actual evidence.
Right. Okay. That's exactly what I thought it would be. Thank you for looking that up. And then I forgot, what was the other thing that I had asked you to look, that you asked a question about, and I said, I don't know, look it up previously. Do you remember?
Oh, the conversion rate success. There wasn't actually statistics on what's the success rate.
Probably because it's so slim.
Yeah, there was an article that said it costs like $700 million in damages because of, what it does to people.
Like in damages that taxpayers have to pay? Or just damages?
They were just saying it does more harm. It's traumatizing people.
Well, yes.
So it's like it's actually causing.
Oh, of course, right?
It's an ultimate negative. But
so even
I
if
don't know how they calculated.
Like even if we were only talking about it fiscally, people would be losing money. I don't know that anyone has ever convinced someone to do conversion therapy because they're like, you know what, you're going to save so much money being straight. Although I think that maybe it could be argued, well, no, that's not true.
I think it's like it fails. Like they try to convert people.
No. I understand what you're saying, but I'm like, that would be like, I was trying to figure it out through like a comedian brain because I was going to say like, it depends. I think probably more straight couples have kids, so that would be a loss there. But then I would argue that at least men are leading a more expensive lifestyle for them if we're doing clothes. And again, I'm working in, grandiose stereotypes here. So, all right. The second thing, as I said, that I wanted to talk about in the main stories is the Supreme Court case, Trump v. Slaughter. This article is from Vox. I do have to go around this paywall, though. I have subscriptions to a lot of places. I don't have a subscription to Vox, but I found a way around it. Don't you guys worry. Mama's here. All right. So this is by Ian Millhiser. Congress is the Supreme Court's favorite punching bag, and it's about to get decked. The GOP justices are about to hand Trump a victory that they have been dreaming about since he was married to Ivana. The outcome in Trump v. Slaughter, which the Supreme Court will hear on Monday, December 8th, could not be more preordained. Slaughter involves a struggle over presidential power that has animated many prominent Republican lawyers and judges since the 1980s. And this peculiar faction of right-wing lawyers and judges now controls the court itself. Really scary stuff. Slaughter is one of the most significant milestones in the Republican Justices Project to remake America's separation of powers. So basically, we're just, again, another big step in making sure that Donald Trump becomes a full-on dictator by the end of this term. In Slaughter, the court is expected to strip Congress of most of its power to create independent, in quotes, federal agencies that have some freedom to act in ways that the president may not like. Trump's arguments in Slaughter closely track the Republican justices' arguments in Trump v. United States, the decision permitting the president to commit crimes. All right. I just like to take a little breather to take this in step by step, because this is some really wild stuff. Okay. Meanwhile, an earlier separate line of cases that the court's Republican majority also championed shifted power away from the executive branch and toward the judiciary, permitting the Supreme Court to veto federal policies created by the executive if a majority of the justices believe those policies are too ambitious. These cases often involve a newly created legal doctrine known as major questions. The court, in other words, is engaged in a wholesale rethinking of the separation of powers. Some parts of this project seek to transfer power away from Congress and to the president. Other parts seek to transfer power from Congress and the president to the judiciary. And none of this project has more than the most tenuous grounding in the Constitution's text. The precise issue before the court in Slaughter is whether President Donald Trump may fire Rebecca Slaughter, that's who this is named after, one of 5 commissioners on the Federal Trade Commission. We talked about that earlier, like months ago. By law, members of the FTC may only be removed, quote, for inefficiency, neglect of duty, or malfeasance in office. Again, we could just say wrongdoing and then everyone could know what we're talking about, but okay. But Trump does not claim, but I know that's an actual quote from the law, so that's why it's using heavier language. But Trump does not claim that Slaughter was neglectful or malfeasant. Instead, he believes her views are, quote, inconsistent with my administration's priorities. If you're holding out hope that Slaughter might prevail, don't. The Republican justices already ruled last September that Trump could, in fact, fire her, although that September order was technically temporary. While the court is now going through the motions of reading briefs and holding an oral argument before it issues its final ruling against Slaughter, it is unlikely that the outcome in this case will change. And it's so interesting. Like, I do wonder when it's kind of so evident the decision they're going to make. Obviously, they have to write up, officially their decisions. But how much in this time when we're like waiting for them on pins and needles, do you think that they're actually like just drinking a cocktail in their office or like playing golf in their office? I just really question how much they're really considering this, looking into the legality of it, looking into the ethics, or how much they're just like, oh, no, I'm just siding with a Republican, you know? Am I stupid? If I was on the Supreme Court, no matter if it was something that would help Republicans or something that would help Democrats, I would look at every case individually and really make a decision like, what do I think is best for this country? Am I dumb? Because that's what I would do. Is that a dumb waste of my time? Should I just be drinking a tequila sunrise and playing mini golf? Sometimes I just think I'm dumb. Sometimes I just think maybe all this is just wasting my own time and I'm having a less good experience here on Earth because I'm worried about all this shit. You know? Maybe I should just kick back. The case turns on something known as the unitary executive, a legal theory that had minimal support on the Supreme Court a generation ago. One of the UR texts laying out this theory is Justice Antonin Scalia's dissent in Morrison v. Olson from 1988, a dissent that no other justice joined, but that all 6 of the current court's Republicans now view as gospel. Scalia's Morrison dissent focused on a provision of the Constitution stating that the executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States of America. According to Scalia, this does not mean some of the executive power, but all of the executive power, and thus it follows that the president must have full control over, including the power to fire, any government official who wields power that is executive in nature. One problem with this unitary executive theory is that it is far from clear which governmental powers should qualify as executive. The Republican justices, for example, all agree that the power to prosecute crimes is a quintessentially executive function. But for much of U.S. history, federal prosecutions were often conducted by private attorneys or by judicial appointees, not by members of the executive branch. Current law still permits federal judges to appoint prosecutors under some circumstances. Similarly, at least some members of the court have tried to justify the major questions doctrine as necessary to ensure that Congress and not the president make the most important policy decisions that shape the national economy. But the very first Congress granted sweeping delegations of power to executive branch officials. So the court's newly imposed limits on executive policymaking are much more grounded in vibes than they are in historical practice or actual law. You know, it's a problem when we're reading like basically a political analysis and the word vibe is being used. And that's not a problem with the author. That's a problem with the administration. The court, in other words, is fundamentally reworking the balance of power among the three branches based on vague constitutional provisions and dubious legal theories with little grounding in history. But all 6 of the court's Republicans appear committed to this project, so it is unlikely to end anytime soon. By law, the FTC is one of several federal agencies whose leaders can only be removed by the president for cause. Often, Congress insulates agency leaders from being fired for political reasons because it wants an agency to make technocratic decisions without fearing pressure from the White House. In some cases, such as the Federal Reserve, an agency might wield power that would be dangerous if it were used to achieve political ends. The Supreme Court has signaled that the Federal Reserve is exempt from the unitary executive theory's command that all agency leaders must be fireable at will by the president. The Supreme Court blessed Congress's decision to protect FTC commissioners from being fired nearly a century ago in Humphrey's Executor v. United States from 1935. In their brief to the justices, moreover, Slaughter's lawyers make a strong case that independent agencies, led by at least some people who could not be fired by the president, have existed since the earliest days of the Republic. In 1790, for example, Treasury Secretary... Do you notice how under Trump's administration is the only time when we hear a lot of talk about, founding fathers and what's happening in the 17 and 1800s? Because he's pulling things out of his asshole. That's why. In 1790, for example, Treasury Secretary Alexander Hamilton proposed a 5-member commission that would oversee repayments of the national debt. Congress largely agreed with Hamilton's proposal and gave seats on the commission to the Chief Justice and the Vice President. The fact that Congress placed the Chief Justice, the head of the judicial branch, on this commission suggests that the framers took a much less rigid approach to the separation of powers than the current court. Additionally, both the Vice President and the Chief Justice cannot be fired by the President. They can only be removed via impeachment. So this 1790 commission is an early example of an agency with members not under the president's control. The unitary executive theory, however, proposes that Hamilton, the 1790 Congress, and the justices who decided Humphrey's executor all misunderstood the Constitution. The premise of the unitary executive is that the power to control federal agencies rests with the president and the president alone. This power is the conclusive and preclusive, as the Republican justices put it in their Trump immunity decision, and Congress is simply not allowed to touch it. Indeed, the unitary executive plays a starring role in the court's instantly anti-canonical Trump opinion, holding that Trump, as president, is allowed to commit crimes. Chief Justice John Roberts begins his argument in that opinion by quoting the same vague passage of the Constitution that Scalia relied upon in Morrison, the one stating the executive power is vested in the president. Roberts then claims that Trump's immunity from many prosecutions flows from legal reasoning that will, in the new case, allow him to fire Rebecca Slaughter. If the president has full control over who leads federal agencies, Roberts argues in Trump, then it follows that Congress lacks authority to control the president's unrestricted power of removal with respect to executive officers of the United States whom he has appointed. Roberts then claims that Trump is also immune from prosecution for anything else he does under his constitutional authority as president. The idea is that when the Constitution gives the president an exclusive power, Congress cannot tread on that power by enacting a criminal statute that limits the president's use of that power. Likewise, this argument holds the judiciary cannot tread on the president's authority by hearing a criminal case questioning his use of that authority. Nor does Roberts shy away from some of the more horrifying implications of this conclusion. Because the Republican justices believe that the power to prosecute federal offenders is a quintessentially executive function. For example, Roberts writes that Trump may not face legal consequences even if he orders the Justice Department to conduct a sham investigation or to target someone for an improper purpose. The Republican justices, in other words, invented the concept of presidential immunity from prosecution nearly 240 years after the Constitution was ratified. And in the Slaughter case, they are almost certain to eliminate Congress's power to create independent federal agencies, except for maybe the Federal Reserve. And they are poised to do so despite a 90-year-old Supreme Court precedent permitting such agencies and strong evidence that the independent agencies have existed since the Washington administration. And the Republican justices derive all of this from an exceedingly vague line in the Constitution that merely states that the president wields executive power. The Roberts Court's other major change to America's separation of powers is the so-called major questions doctrine. As the court has described this doctrine, it requires Congress to speak clearly if it wishes to assign to an agency decisions of vast economic and political significance. In practice, however, the Republican justices have wielded the major questions doctrine to strike down policies that are unambiguously authorized by an act of Congress. One frustrating thing about the major questions doctrine is that a majority of the justices have never agreed on where it comes from. Some of the justices have offered facially ridiculous explanations for the doctrine. Do they mean facial? Justice Amy Coney Barrett, for example, once claimed that it can be derived from a parable involving a babysitter. But a total of 3 justices argued in an opinion by Justice Neil Gorsuch that it is implicit in constitutional concerns about the separation of powers. The doctrine, Gorsuch claimed in an opinion joined by Justices Clarence Thomas, my guy, what a POS, and Samuel Alito, ensures that the national government's power to make the laws that govern us remain where Article 1 of the Constitution says it belongs, with the people's elected representatives in Congress. Like Article 2 of the Constitution, which begins with the nebulous line about executive power that fuels the unitary executive theory, Article 1 of the Constitution vests all legislative powers in Congress. Gorsuch's theory is that the power to make major policy decisions is inherently legislative, and thus Congress cannot delegate it to officials within the executive branch. As an historical matter, this claim is dubious. Much as early American lawmakers created a commission with members the president could not remove, the first Congress also delegated sweeping authority to executive agencies. Among other things, the first Congress gave executive branch officials overseeing the Northwest Territory broad power to adopt and publish in the district such laws of the original states, criminal and civil, as may be necessary and best suited to the circumstances of the district. The first Congress also delegated the entirety of its powers over patents to cabinet officials, permitting them to grant patents so long as they deem the invention or discovery sufficiently useful or important. The major questions doctrine is brand new and thus far has never been used against any president other than Joe Biden. Although, for what it's worth, the court may be about to give this shiny new legal theory some bipartisan credibility. Some of the court's Republicans may use it to strike down Trump's tariffs. But regardless of whether it's a good idea for the court to limit how much power Congress may give to the president, the court's recent attempts to do so are unusual. In the past, the Supreme Court only attempted to police presidential power in this way twice, in 2 decisions handed down in 1935. For nearly all of American history, the court stayed out of questions about how much power federal law could give the president, in large part because vague constitutional provisions about legislative or executive power offer no real guidance on where judges should draw the line. Moreover, while Trump's incompetence makes a strong case for judicial limits on presidential power right now, Trump won't be president forever. If the court cements its new power to veto the executive branch's policy decisions, it won't easily give that power up when a more responsible president is in office. The pattern in all 3 of the Roberts Court's attempts to reallocate power among the 3 branches is that the most Democratic branch, Congress, is the biggest loser. The unitary executive strips away Congress's power to create independent agencies, as well as its power to hold a lawless president accountable by enacting criminal laws that bind the president. The major questions doctrine, meanwhile, shifts power away from both Congress and the president and gives it to the Supreme Court, which now has ultimate veto authority over any act of Congress delegating power to the president and any decision the president makes under that law. Some of these changes, such as Trump's immunity to prosecution, have no precedent whatsoever. Others, such as the major questions doctrine, seek to revive ideas that the court briefly toyed with 3 generations ago before rejecting as unworkable. All of them are only loosely tethered to the Constitution's text, reading expansive and highly detailed meanings into vague words like executive and legislative, even when the framers did not share these interpretations of those words. But whatever the wisdom of this reallocation of power, it appears inevitable that the Republican justices will move forward with their plan. The major questions doctrine is already enshrined in case law, and the court may even hold that it applies to Republican presidents in the tariffs cases. Meanwhile, the outcome in Slaughter appears to be inevitable. The Republican justices have already ruled that Trump may fire Slaughter once. Now they're just going through the motions of producing an opinion explaining why they did so. I know that was long and I know that was heavy, but it was one of our main stories. And I think that was so important, so well researched and so well done. I thought that was a really nice piece. If you are in particular more interested in reading about this, I would also recommend SCOTUS blog. It's scotusblog.com. It's a Dispatch media company, and they have the case previews on there if you're interested in any like upcoming decisions. And there is one on Trump v. Slaughter, which explains it in depth. I think the article we just went over did a good job of doing that. But if you're interested in going on it more, and SCOTUS blog is devoted to covering the U.S. Supreme Court comprehensively without bias and according to the highest journalistic and legal standards. That was something I just came across today, and let me just double check. SCOTUS blog, is this reputable? I mean, that's from their own website. Of course, they're going to say that they are reputable. It looks like people who are just, interested in law, basically, writing about it. Yeah, and kind of when you look it up, it looks like they have a good track record for accuracy, and that it's pieces written by legal experts, journalists, and academics. No matter what you think of lawyers, a lot of times, obviously there's shitty lawyers just as much as there's shitty anyone in any occupation. But what I like about lawyers is if you're working with a good lawyer, they are really one of the people still left on this planet who, if they are a good lawyer, they really are functioning without bias because they really just have such a comprehensive knowledge of the law. And they're not going to give you their opinion. They're going to give you an answer based on their supreme understanding of the law, what is possible, what is legal, what is illegal, and, what room you have to play with. And that's what I like about lawyers, like dealing with lawyers, in the entertainment business, which is where I mostly deal with them. I dealt with them obviously during the election, but I've dealt with them for a much longer period of time in the entertainment business, and how to run things by, and heavy things like slander, defamation, that kind of stuff. Really, using my First Amendment right, as I like to do. And anytime I've approached the lawyers I've had over the years, I've really enjoyed speaking to them. Because they're not giving me an opinion. They're not giving me the answer well, you should be able to do this. They're saying, based on my understanding and practice of the law, these are the options that you have, or, this, you can challenge it, or if you do this, these are the consequences you face. And I think that's really helpful, especially in times when things feel so confusing. Also, I was thinking, this is a side thought I had while reading the article, just to kind of about, how important it is to make sure that you're taking in factual information. And that's why I still read full articles on this show. I know, it's lengthy. I know you could do it yourself, but number one, you're probably not. I'm curating the show, and I think it's, instead of just sitting and, shooting the shit about ideas as so many podcasts do, I think, reading real news by real accredited news sources and still, making it a point that we do still believe in the press on this show, even though I have personal negative feelings about some of them after running for mayor, and then commenting on it and spitballing and thinking of ideas and thinking of other, scenarios and stuff. And it's very clear where my opinion starts and where the, piece being held to journalistic standards starts. I think that's important for a news show. And just this past week, I follow Unbiased Jordan on Instagram because I do think she is, pretty good at presenting some unbiased pieces. And there was a media Ad Fontes Media, and again, I don't know. They did a media bias chart for a bunch of shows that talk about political subject matter, and they were basing it on thorough fact reporting or fact-dense analysis is at the top, and then the bottom is contains inaccurate or fabricated info, misleading info, and then they have it, skewing right and skewing left. And there's plenty of podcasts on here. Some in if you want to look in the middle, and I knew this because I rely on NPR a lot, but NPR News Now is a great mainstream but unbiased. I know when we think NPR, we think super left. I have found NPR over the years doing this show. They have great articles and they present a lot of interesting things. They cover a lot of stories that I don't see elsewhere, and I just think they're really fantastic. A little left leaning, but still pretty factual, although less factual than NPR. You have, Ezra Klein at the New York Times if you're lefty. And then on the right, listen, I'm only bringing this up not to start a problem, but just because a lot of you, because we're both in the comedy community, always like to say, did you hear what Dave Smith did? Did you listen to Dave Smith's latest podcast episode? Did you see Dave Smith's debate? And I want to make it very clear on this show. I don't listen to Dave Smith, and I don't give a fuck what he says, and I don't think that he is a good political voice. He is a person who says things confidently, and I know one of you narcs out there is going to clip this and give it to me, whatever. He was a fuckface to me during my campaign, and I think it's a pussy-ass bitch move that he hasn't run for office himself. So clip that and send it to him. I don't give a flying fuck. But on this thing, it is so funny because his podcast, for accuracy and fabricated information, charts highest for inaccuracy and fabricating information on this chart of so many podcasts. He on this podcast, he appears as giving more misinformation than the fucking Joe Rogan Experience. Okay, it is so far down on here. It contains misleading info, contains inaccurate, fabricated info, and skews so far right that the only podcasts skewing more far right are Roseanne and Timcast IRL. So please, I usually don't respond when you guys tell me that, and it isn't a lot of you. It's just consistent enough, and Mike brings them up in a lot, so it's a nice but he has a really big listenership, and I just, guys, take what you want, but this chart speaks for itself. And I know we can make charts up, but that chart does look pretty accurate. And again, Unbiased Jordan is the person who put that chart up. I don't think she conducted, I don't think she's the one who listened to everything, but she shared it, and she is ranked very highly as providing a lot of information and providing unbiased information. And so if that's your holy grail, if that's your Bible, feel free to listen to it. But please, asterisk for entertainment purposes only. Think of him as a psychic, right? All right, moving on. All right, let's see. Moving on to the end of the show. All right, so we're going to go into a couple girl things to end the show. Let's see. This was very interesting. Bernie really went hard against AI this week. And I wanted to read his official statement. They did end up publishing it, I think, in The Guardian as well. But it's on, his official statement is on his U.S. Senator for Vermont site, which is, sanders.senate.gov. And he did a lot of videos about AI posing a threat. And, we talk about, AI a lot on this show, and some people vehemently against it, some people for it. I think it's a part of our world, but of course proceed with caution. I am not anti-AI, but he made up some really good points. And perhaps the strongest argument that I've heard so far against AI, which is not that AI is inherently bad, but that AI is bad because of who is profiting from it, therefore making it untrustworthy because of who is monetizing it. And it's like when these people have control over things like Amazon already, like they have control over where we shop. They have control over so many things. What's a logical next step as we go further and further into the future? Well, basically being able to have control of our minds and purchase our minds. This is not all going off what he says. I'm kind of expanding off things that he said. But it got me thinking. And it's one of the first anti-AI diatribes, for lack of a better word, that actually resonated with me. And I felt like was really making some points. Because I think too often people who are anti-AI are just come off as people who are scared of technology and want to make those little crocheting animals in their apartment in Bushwick. And that's never going to resonate with me. If you're someone who likes to do that, that's great, but I'm not going to listen to your stance on AI. You deserve to live a happy and fair life, but I'm not going to listen to your thoughts on AI. So again, this is AI poses unprecedented threats. Congress must act now. This is from, a day ago, December 2nd. Artificial intelligence and robotics will transform the world. It will bring unimaginable changes to our economy, our politics, warfare, our emotional well-being, our environment, and how we educate and raise our children. Further, there is a very real fear that in the not-so-distant future, a super-intelligent AI could replace humans in controlling the planet. Wild first paragraph. So many people are unhappy to be alive in this time. I'm kind of happy to be alive in this time. Very interesting time. And also obviously the environmental aspect of AI is not, something that I'm not paying attention to. That being said, I think that there are environmental factors that continually happen. I mean, you think it didn't damage the planet when we invented cars, when we invented airplanes, right? But it's this notion that protecting the environment is somehow falling onto the shoulders of individuals when it really should be, again, the environment should be protected under legislation that is created by our elected officials. So we already know things are not going well when it's on us as individuals to protect the environment. Also not possible, but yes. I don't want to say it's not possible. You could create, a big movement, but you in your house alone, you're not making a huge impact. Despite the extraordinary importance of this issue and the speed at which it is progressing, AI is getting far too little discussion in Congress, the media, and within the general population. This has got to change now. Several months ago, as the ranking member of the U.S. Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions, I undertook an investigation regarding the monumental challenges that we face with the rapid development of artificial intelligence. Recently, I held a public discussion with Nobel Prize winner Dr. Geoffrey Hinton, considered to be the godfather of AI, to get his views on a wide range of AI-related subjects. Based on our investigation and other information that we are gathering, my staff and I will soon be presenting a very specific set of recommendations to Congress as to how we can begin addressing some of the unprecedented threats that AI poses. Here are some of the outstanding questions that we intend to answer in our report. Who should be in charge of the transformation into an AI world? Currently, a handful of the very wealthiest people on Earth, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Peter Thiel, and others. So not only the richest people on Earth, I want to also point out all men and all white, right? All white, yeah. Are investing many hundreds of billions of dollars in developing and implementing AI and robotics. Are we comfortable with seeing these enormously powerful men shape the future of humanity without any democratic input or oversight? Again, I think one of the strongest anti-AI points that I've seen. Is the goal of the AI revolution simply to make the very rich even richer and more powerful, or will this revolutionary technology be utilized to benefit all of humanity? And so I like this argument again because he's not saying down with AI, it's bad, robots are bad. That's not a progressive thought. And I love that at 80 whatever years old, he is like actually embracing it in a way. He's saying like, yes, this technology is coming. It's coming fast, and like it could be utilized to benefit all of humanity, but I don't think that's going to happen if we're putting it in the hands of the same, 5 or so people who are on record as basically only doing themselves, things to make themselves richer and more powerful. Why does Donald Trump, who is strongly supporting the big tech oligarchs, want to impose an executive order blocking states from regulating artificial intelligence? Again, I thought we loved when states have stuff. Why does Thiel, the billionaire investor and co-founder of Palantir, call those who want regulations over AI legionnaires of the Antichrist? Does this elite group of big tech billionaires believe that they have the divine right to rule? How far will they go to resist government regulation? What impact will AI and robotics have on our economy and the lives of working people? The report I released last month found that AI, automation, and robotics could replace nearly 100 million jobs in America over the next decade, including 40% of registered nurses, 47% of truck drivers, 64% of accountants, 65% of teaching assistants, and 89% of fast food workers, among many other occupations. Musk recently said, AI and robots will replace all jobs. Working will be optional. Gates predicted that humans won't be needed for most things. Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic, warned that AI could lead to the loss of half of all entry-level white-collar jobs. If AI and robotics eliminate millions of jobs and create massive unemployment, how will people survive if they have no income? How do they feed their families or pay for housing or healthcare? Is government doing anything to prepare for this potential disaster? Yeah, because you would hope that you're like, okay, well, let's use AI to improve the world so that people don't need to work as much, but still can earn a living. That would be like my number one thing. It's like, yeah, like robotics is a great way to help us in an overworked culture, but we don't want them. But, in a capitalist society, we still all have to be making our own paycheck, right? So where are the changes happening? What impact will AI have on our democracy? At a time when the foundations of democracy are under attack in the U.S. and throughout the world, will AI and robotics help make us a freer society, or will it give even more power to the oligarchs who control the technology? Will AI result in a massive invasion of our privacy and civil liberties? Larry Ellison, the second richest person on earth, predicted an AI-powered surveillance state where citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that is going on. Are we reaching the stage where every phone call that we make, every email and text that we send, and look into it? I mean, there's already a lot of instances with, like, I think Google and stuff where you have to be ticking off a box, which is on my freaking to-do list to do, so that their AI is not reading your emails. Right now, they're using it basically to charge you more for shit, which is already bad enough. But that's the step before they're using it to send you to prison, is it not? Every bit of research we do on the internet will be available to the owners of AI. How do we sustain a democracy under those conditions? How do we protect privacy? And ultimately, do I think they're going to use that information first to monetize, to sell us more shit, to charge us for more shit? Yes. But after they get bored doing that, or after they milk us for all they can milk us, what is next? First they want to monetize it, then they'll use it to control us. And again, I am not anti-AI. You guys know that. But I think, again, very interesting points being made here. Could AI literally redefine what it means to be a human being? Who we are and how we develop emotionally and intellectually is highly dependent upon our relationships with other human beings, our parents, family, teachers, lovers, friends, and coworkers. I don't like that Bernie wrote lovers. To quote the 17th century poet John Donne, "No man is an island unto himself." That was hack. We could have gone with something else. The human beings with whom we interact help shape us to become the people we are. Ugh, tell that to me, who was never happier except for during COVID. But AI is changing that. According to a recent poll by Common Sense Media, 72% of U.S. teenagers say that they have used AI for companionship and Corinne, and more than half do so regularly. What does it mean for young people to form friendships with AI and become increasingly isolated from other human beings? What happens when millions seek emotional support from a machine? What is the long-term impact upon our humanity when our most important relationships are not with other human beings? What impact is AI having on our environment? AI data centers require a massive amount of electricity and water. A relatively small AI data center can consume more electricity than 80,000 homes. A large one, like the $165 billion data center that OpenAI and Oracle are building in Abilene, Texas, will use as much electricity as 750,000 homes. Meta is building a data center in Louisiana the size of Manhattan that will use as much electricity as 1.2 million homes. And I do also want to point out, for all the people who are just like, fuck you, you're a bad person for using AI because it kills the environment. Yes, it is a worse effect on the environment than Google, but things like Google also, when you're doing these Google searches, that's also going through a data center. That's also harmful to the environment, which just becomes so second nature to us that we're doing it. But again, all these things, anytime we have these technological advancements, most times we are harming the environment. The hope, in my opinion, is that although we create these technologies that at first harm the environment, ultimately the technologies should help us to create solutions to help the environment. But it's like, you got to do that second part too, In community after community, Americans are fighting back against data centers being built by some of the largest corporations in the world. They are opposing the destruction of their local environment, soaring electric bills, and the diversion of scarce water supplies. Nationally, how will continued construction of AI data centers affect our environment? How will AI and robotics impact foreign policy and warfare? Tragically, in the midst of the 21st century, governments have not yet created a mechanism for solving international or internal disputes without armed conflict. Nonetheless, government leaders are often hesitant about going to war because of their fear of public reaction to the loss of life. It's not great politics for any government to have large numbers of young people or civilians get killed in war. What does the future look like if millions of robot soldiers replace human soldiers? Will leaders be more likely to engage in war or threaten military actions if they don't have to worry about loss of life? Will there be an arms race in robots? How will that shape foreign policies around the world? Is AI an existential threat to human control of the planet? Some of us remember the scene in that great 1968 science fiction film 2001: A Space Odyssey, in which HAL, the superintelligent computer that controls the spaceship, rebels against its human masters. Today, as AI makes rapid progress, Dr. Hinton recently told me that it was only a matter of time before AI becomes smarter than humans. Yeah, I'll say, does that raise the possibility that humans will lose their ability to control the planet? How do we stop that extraordinary threat? And these are just some of the questions that must be answered as AI and robotics rapidly progress. AI and robotics are revolutionary technologies that will bring about an unprecedented transformation of society. Will these changes be positive and improve life for ordinary Americans, or will they be disastrous? Congress must act now. So again, very interesting stuff. I really, really like that. I thought that was very, very interesting. Now, I'm gonna end with just a little bit of talking about, the Narco speedboats and the Trump pardoning a Honduran crime boss, right? So the Free Press, and thanks that, good thing that Mike's not here, but they basically did kind of like a sister piece, maybe we'll call it, to a Washington Post story. It says killing narco speedboat survivors is a war crime, right? And this it says a recent Washington Post story alleged that the Navy killed 2 men clinging to a boat that was bombed by the U.S. No matter the rationale, says our legal columnist, that's murder, pure and simple. This is by Jed Rubenfeld. On September 10th, 8 days after the first U.S. bombing of the Narco speedboat in the Caribbean, which we've been following, The Intercept, a left-wing news site reported that there were people on board who had survived the initial airstrike, but were then killed in a follow-up attack. No details were offered. No such second strike was shown in the video of the bombing posted by President Trump, and the allegations seemed to vanish. President Trump, who hates fake news. It's almost like he's posting fake news. But yesterday, the Washington Post made the very same accusation, this time filled in with explosive details. After the first bomb struck the boat, the Post reported, a drone video feed showed 2 survivors clinging to the smoldering wreck in the open sea. According to the Post, Mission Commander Admiral Frank Mitchell Bradley then ordered a second strike specifically to kill the 2 survivors. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has called the Post story fabricated, inflammatory, and derogatory, reiterating that the speedboat attacks have been approved by the best military and civilian lawyers. But Hegseth did not specifically deny any of the particulars in the Post's account. If the Post is right, and we don't know yet whether it is, Bradley committed murder. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. The administration's legal defense of the speedboat attack goes like this. President Trump has determined that the U.S. is in a state of armed conflict with Latin American drug cartels, triggering the law of war. Under the law of war, boats carrying cartel contraband are legitimate military targets, and the crew of those boats are not civilians but combatants. On the facts presented in the Washington Post story, Bradley would still be guilty of murder. After a naval attack, you cannot kill defenseless shipwrecked survivors floating in the high seas. In 1944, German U-boat commander Heinz Eck torpedoed a Greek merchantman. The attack itself was not thought to be illegal because the law of war can permit destroying enemy merchant vessels without warning, regardless of the fact that crewmen will die. That's why the administration may have a valid legal basis for bombing cartel narco boats. But in his attack on the German boat during World War II, Eck took things a step further. He killed at least 4 survivors who were clinging to wreckage. Eck was tried at Nuremberg and executed. According to the Post, Bradley's justification for his order was that if the survivors had lived, they might have called for help and their rescuers might have obtained the contraband the boat was carrying. Good luck telling that to a judge. Eck tried a similar excuse. He said that leaving any visible signs of his attack on the Greek merchant ship would have risked the discovery and sinking of his submarine. That wasn't a crazy claim, but the deliberate killing of someone successfully taken out of the fight, even if the killing serves a military purpose, is prohibited by the laws of war. For example, it's often militarily useful to kill prisoners of war, but as the Second Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals put it in 2014, if a soldier intentionally kills a prisoner of war, he commits murder. Knowing when a potential enemy combatant is hors de combat out of the fight can be hopelessly and dangerously difficult in the field, but there is almost no doubt in the circumstances described by the Post, as the U.S. Commander's Handbook on the Law of Naval Operations puts it, hors de combat specifically includes combatants or civilians defenseless because of shipwreck. According to the Post, Bradley issued his Kill the Survivors order in compliance with an earlier command given by Hegseth to kill everybody. Even if true, that's no defense for Bradley. Like an order to kill prisoners, an order to kill defenseless shipwreck survivors probably falls in the rare category of orders so manifestly unlawful that soldiers have a duty to disobey it. Ex-second in command, August Hoffman, was also tried at Nuremberg. He too was executed. As for Hegseth himself, assuming the Post's account is accurate, his order is ambiguous. The Post story is carefully worded to avoid saying when the defense secretary gave his order, whether he saw the video feed, or whether he was present when Bradley took his action. Hegseth's order may simply have authorized the initial bombing of the speedboat rather than the instructing Bradley to kill any survivors. In other words, even if the Post got the facts right, Hegseth may not be guilty of a crime. On the Sunday morning talk shows, both Democrats and Republicans in Congress vowed to investigate. Obviously, if that occurred, that would be very serious, said Ohio Republican Representative Mike Turner on the CBS show Face the Nation. I agree that would be an illegal act, he added, referring to the alleged killing of the survivors. There's been a lot of talk about a classified opinion issued by Trump's Office of Legal Counsel, reportedly concluding that the narco boat strikes are legal. Some have argued that this opinion immunizes servicemen participating in the attacks from prosecution. I don't have access to the OLC opinion, but I doubt it has that effect, and I strongly suspect it does not say that deliberately killing shipwreck survivors is lawful. But even if it did, that would, in my opinion, be of no legal consequence. President Trump can, of course, pardon whomever he chooses, but the Office of Legal Counsel cannot legalize war crimes, and the U.S. military that my daughter served in does not condone or deliberately commit them. So I thought that was very interesting. I guess, today's episode is taking a real legal spin. We're doing a real legal episode here, guys. We're basically lawyers. You can tell your family when you go home for the holiday that, Kim Kardashian might have passed the bar, but you basically did because you listened to Without a Country. And the last thing I want to go over today is, about this, with Trump saying it's very important that he takes down drugs, yada, 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 got to take down drugs and drug lords and cartels. And that's why I'm, doing all this shit that I'm doing. No, he's not. We knew he was bullshitting, but his actions are now finally proving that he's bullshitting. This is also from Vox, big week for Vox here on the show. This says, Trump's confounding pardon of a drug lord briefly explained. So, again, he's pardoning a drug lord. Obviously, he doesn't give a shit about drugs. He's looking for oil. He's looking for money. He's looking out for himself and his friends. And, it's so disrespectful that, he's saying anything else, Okay, so this is by Cameron Peters. It's appeared in the log off, it said. Okay, so welcome to the log off. The former president of Honduras, who was serving a 45-year sentence for trafficking huge amounts of cocaine into the U.S., was freed from prison on Tuesday following a pardon from President Donald Trump. What happened? Trump promised to pardon Juan Orlando Hernandez late last week after receiving an ingratiating letter from the former Honduran president, who described himself as a fellow victim of political persecution by the Biden administration. What did Hernandez do? Well, Hernandez, who served 2 terms as president of Honduras, was convicted on drug trafficking and firearms offenses last year by a federal district court in New York. Prosecutors said he abused his powers as president to help deliver more than 400 tons of cocaine into the United States and accepted bribes from drug lords like El Chapo. Why does this matter? This pardon is a big deal for many reasons, but its intersection with another Trump administration policy makes it especially lurid. The Trump administration is currently on the brink of war with Venezuela, which it has painted as a narco state headed by President Nicolas Maduro. As my colleague Josh Keating has written, that's misleading for multiple reasons and much closer to the reality of Hernandez's case. But instead of threatening military force, Trump has seen to it that a key perpetrator will walk free. What's the big picture? Trump's Hernandez pardon may be one of the most high-profile abuses of the president's clemency power, but it's far from his only one. He's also granted clemency to fraudsters, corrupt politicians, the founder of an online drug marketplace, and every person convicted in connection with the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol, including some who assaulted police officers. Other pardons, like that of billionaire crypto tycoon Changpeng Zhao, which we also talked about a couple weeks ago in October, raised the possibility of self-dealing by Trump. Zhao's crypto exchange Binance has partnered with the Trump family to massively enrich Trump. Again, I don't mind if you're a Republican. If you're still on Team Trump, are you listening to anything? All right. That is our show for today. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. If you have anything to send me, again, especially interesting municipal stories from your area, or we can even go from, something interesting your congressperson or your governor is doing, send it to withoutacountrypodcast@gmail.com. Just like stuff that's happening locally, whether it only affects your city or it in fact affects all of us in the United States, or if it affects all of us in the freaking world. And certainly, I'm interested in municipal politics from the UK, from Australia. You have a lot of interesting stuff going on there. Stuff that's happening with, rightward movement or something, maybe an interesting political party that is erupting. We do concentrate on American news on this show, but I am interested in hearing what's happening in other countries. I think Americans also, because we are so self-centered in our thinking, even when we're thinking negatively about America, we still like to think that bad stuff is only happening here. It's a big liberal thought in America that, the U.S. is so bad and everywhere else is so great. But I follow plenty of creators living in the UK and Australia specifically, and politicians from those places. And things are certainly not all great at all in Australia and the UK. I would say those are the places that I'm probably most well-versed in outside of the US. Maybe a little Canada, but honestly, I haven't heard what's going on in Canada. I haven't even heard that much about it lately. I know there's lots of Canadian listeners, so any of that stuff I'm also very interested in. Don't feel like you only have to send American stuff. We always have room on could be worse, and I always like to see legislation that's being passed or political trends in other countries that we have relationships with, because I do definitely think that affects U.S. policy. That can all be sent to withoutacountrypodcast@gmail.com. Again, please make sure to tune in to my live stream with congressional candidate Kat Abu-Ghazaleh. Tomorrow, it's 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Central. You'll see 6:30 p.m. on all this stuff, but just keep in mind that's because she's in the Chicago area, so it is Central time for her, and that's her stuff. But it is 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, which is what I always post all my times in. And we're going to have a live stream on a Twitch and talk about lots of things politically, running for office, and, what her campaign is looking like these days, her indictment perhaps. Very excited to talk with her, and hopefully you can join and participate, ask questions and stuff like that. And if you have any questions for me about running for mayor, that would be a perfect place that you could ask those questions on that live stream. So that is our show, and make sure you're following me on Without a Country podcast on Instagram. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube. I'm at Philanthropy Gal right now. I am doing Corinne 25 days of content. Some of it's new, a lot of it's new. Some of it is like from the vault, stuff from I just posted something from 2012 earlier today. New stuff, old stuff, unseen stuff, favorites. It's 25 straight days of content to celebrate the holiday season with me. That is on my Instagram right now, but I'm also posting it on Threads, on Twitter, on X, on all the things. I think it's on my Facebook private page, but I got to put on my fan page too. Anyway, Please join us for that. We'll get that merch ready. Look out for that. So leave some money in your holiday budget. Thank you so much to AJ. You can follow him at AJ Giro Comedy. Do you have anything else that you wanted to promote, AJ? Anything that you're working on? No? All right, well. Anyway, and I keep forgetting to promote this. Speaking of this, AJ's going to be doing a set on this. Chloe's going to be doing a big set on this. Our friend Diego, a bunch of friends in the friend group are going to be performing on this. But on, what is it? What's the date? Saturday, December 13th, I believe. Yeah, this is what I should be promoting the whole time. Saturday, December 13th, Comedy Dojo, which is in Morris Plains, New Jersey. Me and Chloe LeBranch are co-headlining. It's just like a small casual show, but it should be super fun. I'm not in New Jersey a lot, even though I'm from there, just because I assume that you guys will come to the city, but I know I'm wrong. A lot of people from New Jersey won't. But yeah, Morris Plains, New Jersey, Saturday, December 13th. Make sure to make it out to that show. Me and Chloe LeBranch. Ticket link is in my Linktree link, which is in the bio of my Instagram. So buy tickets to that. It's always a fun time with me and Chloe, and you have some other special guests on that show. I think Danny Braff is on the show too, fun comedian. That's just going to be a real fun show. And the dojo is like in Tiff's, which is Tiff's is a chain, but there used to be one by me in Union, where I was from, and they have my favorite chicken fingers that I've ever eaten in my life, like the chicken tenders or whatever. I mean, I haven't had them in years, but I'm hoping the recipe hasn't changed. Great honey mustard sauce. It's like made in house. So come eat some chicken tenders or eat a salad if you don't eat chicken tenders, or I think they have ribs and stuff too. A real fun place, and they support a lot of comedians. So make sure to do that. Thank you for supporting this show. Join the Patreon. Love you so much. Thanks for critically thinking. Where's Shelly Miscavige? We don't know. Don't join a cult, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye.